Welcome, everyone. My name is Karen Ekberg, and I'm the CEO of Leadership and Sustainability, and I'm really pleased to be with you here today. We will be talking about BRM today and the updates to BRM and also the new alignment with the CSRD. So BRM and Cascade has been working over the past years to make sure that the BRM is aligned with CSRD. BRM is not the same thing as CSRD, just to be really clear. But it is a support tool to be really effective also with CSRD. And I'm really glad to be here. I know that we have a lot of old and new friends also in this call. And with that, I would like to show you who is speaking today. So I will be speaking, but also Sophia Wolf, who is in our strategy team here and is sustainability manager. And she will very soon begin speaking as well. So I will not let her introduce herself separately now. And for this webinar, you are all on mute in order to make sure that we do have a good audio quality. But you are really open and free to send us your questions in the Q&A function and box, please. So you can see at the bottom of your screen, you should be able to see in the Q&A function. You open it up and then you type your question and you send your question. And just also to be clear, everyone who is registered to this webinar will receive the presentation and also the recording after the webinar. Great. And with that, I will already hand over to Sophia.
Great. Thank you, Karin, for the first introductional words. Hello, everyone. My name is Sophia. Karin already introduced me. And now let's have a look at the agenda for today. Yes, we have already met us. And after our webinar, you will have a better overview of all Higg tools and their different benefits. And you will also know about the adaptations of the BRM and why they will help you and your organization in the future. Also, you will get an insight into the practical example of how to use the Higg BRM mapping, and you will also know how to best prepare for the Higg BRM verification. At the end, of course, you will also have some time for questions and answers. But please feel free to place them in the chat as well during the webinar. So let's start with the first section and get an overview of the Higg BRM. And in general, the Higg BRM is part of the Higg Index, and the Higg Index was developed to help organizations make systematic change. And it covers, in general, 3 different categories: the brand and retail, the facilities, and the product module. And those categories are again supported by 5 different subtools, which help to assess and measure the social and environmental performance of the complete value chain, and also the environmental impact of products. And the tools help to identify, to understand, and to measure different areas of improvement. And as a company, when you use those tools, there are different important aspects. So first of all, you will use a standardized tool, meaning you will be able to compare your results to other companies and to other products. And secondly, you can identify hotspots. What are the most important topics that you need to look at? And this is a very important aspect in the light of the complexity of sustainability in general. And third, you can improve your sustainability performance as you know where your weaknesses are. And last but not least, you are enabled to engage with value chain partners because, as I already said before, it is all about scale and scaling systematic change across the whole industry of consumer goods. So the tool includes the Higg facility tools regarding the supply chain, with the Higg facility environmental module and the Higg social and labor module. Then the Higg brand and retail module, which we are talking about today, to gain a deeper understanding of your own operations, and then the Higg product tool, including the material sustainability index and the product module. And the tools go across different parts of the entire supply chain, starting from tier 4, where raw material extraction is happening, to tier 3, covering raw material processing, over to tier 2 when it comes to material production, and tier 1 focusing on the finished product assembly. Also tier 0, where the offices, retail locations and distribution centers are located, and also very important, the consumer use and end of life. So here you can see now that the Higg facility environmental module and the Higg social and labor module covers the first 4 tiers, whereas the Higg product tools only, not only, they cover the whole the entire value chain of the company. And in today's webinar, we will focus on the BRM, the brand and retail module, which really offers you an excellent tool for self-assessment. And as you can see, it provides a standardized framework to measure and benchmark practices through the entire value chain, from raw material sourcing to product end of life. Yes, the Higg brand and retail module is a great self-assessment tool in general, designed to help apparel, footwear, textile, and also hard good brands and retailers to evaluate and improve their sustainability performance across various impacts. And as always, the sustainability pillars are environment, social, and governance. And each one of these is divided into different subcategories. For example, an environmental assessment requires brand and retailers here to analyze their impacts with regards to climate, water, waste, chemicals, and biodiversity. And the second pillar, the social pillar, contains the sections workers, employees, consumers, and communities that could be affected by the company's operations. And then also the governance part, where the structured management topic is included, and the ethics and behavior part. And then on the next slide, let's have a look at the added value. What is the added value of completing and verifying the BRM? In general, you can say that it is an integrated approach to measuring ESG performance across the entire value chain, as I already mentioned. And this supports also internal alignment, engagement, and commitment. Secondly, it offers a risk assessment for better actionable data and insights into the own business operations and also along the entire value chain. Then it is also possible to identify sustainability hotspots, critical issues, and improvement opportunities. And it is also possible to calculate scores, and it allows data verification with increased accuracy. Then you can also share and communicate results easily with external partners. And it also catalyzes sustainability education and provides guidance. Also, it drives improvements over time through benchmarking of sustainability performance. And lastly, it is aligned with industry-wide frameworks and global regulations. So then let's have a look at the typical question structure in each section of the BRM. And as you can see here at the beginning, there's always a section about measurement and targets, and where the foundation are risk assessment, and based on the measurements, targets were set and approved. And here you can report on the targets that you set. Then the second part is the implementation and results part, where based on programs, policies, strategies, and initiatives, transition plans were developed, and it is reported on the achievements of the targets here. Then the third part, it is required to report on communication. So if you have reported publicly. And the fourth part here is the collaboration part. For example, on results from stakeholder engagements, partnerships, collaborations, or funding mechanisms. And important to know here is also that the previous section or questions can only be responded when the answer was yes. So the next section can only be answered when the previous section was answered with yes, in order to score points here in the following sections. And we will also have an example here in the presentation today. First, the example is about communities. And here you can see, for example, the first part about measurement and targets. The question could be, Has your company formally set and approved targets to address its impacts on the rights of local communities? So the topic here is local communities and the impact here. And then the second part here for implementation and results, the question could be, did your company meet its annual milestone targets to address its community rights impacts in its value chain and communities in scope? Then the third part here, the communication part, the question could be, did your company report publicly on its community rights programs, targets, and progress? And then fourth, the collaboration part, the question could be, did your company participate in any multi-stakeholder initiative to address community rights impacts and opportunities? So as you see, all those questions refer to a similar topic, but all in a different perspective. So from those four pillars. And then on the next slide, we also have another example regarding biodiversity. And here the example question could be for measurements and targets. Has your company formally set and approved targets to address its nature impacts? And then the next one, implementation and results. The example question here is, did your company implement a nature program or strategy to achieve its nature-related targets? And third one, regarding communication then, did your company report publicly on its nature targets and progress? So public reporting. And the fourth part here, collaboration. Did your company consult with relevant stakeholders as part of the development of its nature program or strategy? So I hope this helped a bit to get an overview of the structure of the BRM and the different questions that it relates to. And with that, I'm handing over to Karin to give an insight into the different changes of the BRM.
Thank you so much, Sophia. And also, I really want to emphasize what Sophia said about the scoring here. It's really important to understand that, for example, in this case, if you respond no to the first question here, has your company formally set and approved targets to address its nature impacts? Then you cannot respond yes to, did you implement a nature program or strategy? And also, you will not have so much to report on publicly, because if you don't have any targets, then what shall you report on? So that is something that we often during verifications are discussing, but it is really this logical path here that you need to go through. So really start with the first question, make sure that you do set and approve targets. And we see this is actually often, still even with some larger brands, this is often a weak point, to really have defined and clearly articulated targets. But with that, I will move over and talk a bit about the updates to the Higg BRM. So the goal for Cascade for this new update was to further bridge the gaps between the ESRS, CSRD and the Higg BRM by mapping any inconsistencies with the ESRS and to support compliance with CSRD. And to that effect, Cascade has also published a white paper. I think it was in August last year. They published a white paper where they had done this mapping. So the new version of the Higg BRM includes now tags that assist with mapping of data points of the European Sustainability Reporting Standards, the ESRS. And I will actually show you an example a bit later in this presentation. And the BRM also offers detailed guidance on how it can assist with reporting obligations under the CSRD. And the white paper I've already mentioned, you can click on this link here once you receive the presentation, and you can then download that white paper. And the Cascade has also produced an overview of the coverage of the ESRS data points in the BRM, providing information on how the ESRS is matching with the Higg BRM. And you see that full table here. So, for example, the general information in your management report, the ESRS codification is ESRS 2 general disclosures. And the BRM impact areas are actually several that are affected here and are included and used. to cover the ESRS 2 and its environment general, social general, governance general, and also governance structure and management. And then on the environmental side, you can see the ESRS. We have the E1 and down to E5, and you can see which BRM impact areas that are covered. So climate change, the ESRS E1 climate change is covered in the climate section, but also to some extent in the environment general section. Pollution is covered in the BRM sections, water, chemicals, and environment general. So you see that the terminology has not been exactly the same in the BRM. The BRM was developed before the ESRS was available, and even long before ESRS was available. But this mapping here, it's a very high level mapping, of course. In the white paper, you can read much more details about it. But here you can see how it all fit together at a higher level. And then what I want to also to show you now are the different areas and themes that have been added to the BRM in the meantime. So the latest mapping that was done by Cascale, and based on that mapping over the past few months, Cascale has identified some detailed topics that should be included also in the BRM, and they have been added always at the end of this relevant sections. And in this case, these new questions, they are not scored for you. So it's voluntary for you. If you complete the BRM, you can respond to those questions because they support you in preparing yourself for your own strategy implementation, but also CSRD reporting. But they are not scored at this point in time. And on the environment side, I would like to show you which topics that have been added. I don't give you the specific question number here because that would be a bit too detailed, but I give you the topics. So for example, you can see that stakeholder engagement, the active stakeholder engagement has been added as a topic. The use of a formal methodology for double materiality assessment. So we had that question about a risk assessment previously, but now we are asked the question about having a formal methodology for the double materiality assessment. And then organizations should also evaluate the effectiveness of their own environmental policy, measure energy consumption, resource inflows, and pollutant emissions. And there is also now a new question related to conducting a resilience analysis of the company's strategy in relation to climate risks and biodiversity, and to adapt the strategy accordingly. So this resilience analysis, this is a bit of a new perspective in general, I think, in the sustainability area. And then Cascale also is asking for alignment between the business strategy and the climate change mitigation goals. And I can only say I think this is a really important topic where I believe many brands and retailers and also manufacturers still have a long way to go. And that is to make sure that your business strategy, even your business model, that they both are connected to the sustainability strategy. So you don't want your sourcing departments to go in one direction, suddenly beginning to source in a new country without the sustainability people, and hopefully they even work embedded in the sourcing department to support there and make sure that all risks are addressed and that you can deliver still a good sustainability performance via your manufacturing site. So in this particular example, climate change mitigation strategies, but of course this is true for all elements of the sustainability strategy. They should really go hand in hand. And in the best case, the sustainability strategy is just one element within the business strategy. And then we also have the consideration of ecological thresholds when setting environmental targets. So this is also a really new perspective in the BRM, not so new in the general sustainability development, but here we are even talking about trying to understand what are the ecological thresholds within which I need to operate. And we also have the use of microplastics. This is also not a new topic at all, has been around now for 10 years. And furthermore, the pollution and biodiversity targets, that they actually also address the gaps in the EU taxonomy. And with these are the DNSH, these are the do no significant harm criteria in the EU taxonomy. And furthermore, also the form and methodology to collect data on pollutant emissions, a transition plan to align the business model and strategy with biodiversity goals. So this goes into what I was talking about before. Measurement of impact on biodiversity across the value chain. I really would like brands to do this. Very often we hear when we talk about biodiversity, oh, I'm not using cotton. Biodiversity is not relevant for me. But of course it is. Synthetic materials have a significant impact on biodiversity as well. And along your entire value chain, in your production, with your suppliers, there are significant biodiversity impacts as well. So you really need to take that value chain approach. And this is, of course, as many of you will know, this is one of our favorite topics, the value chain. We think it is really important to include the entire value chain into all considerations, also when you develop a double materiality assessment or when you develop your strategy. Use of biodiversity offsets in action plans. And that was these were the environmental topics that had been added. And on the social side, we also have several important measures that are now included. So we have the review and update and regular review and update of social policies, as well as also the collection and monitoring of data on key employee characteristics and turnover, the monitoring of effectiveness of health and safety management systems. And we also have a system to track and report on human rights breaches. It's an old topic, but I think the monitoring and the data management around the social topics and the working condition topics could be strengthened in many regions and in many brands. And also the report on percentage of employees covered by collective bargaining agreements, a formal process to stop, prevent, or mitigate consumer end user related human rights. This might need some further investigation. What does this really mean? And then publicly also communicate identified human rights risks and impacts on consumers and communities. So these are really, really important topic, and I would really like to see that you begin working on them, even though you know that the BRM is not scoring this. But of course, also the ESRS and the CSRD, when you report according to CSRD, you will need this information. And in general, many of you are aware that at least in the apparel, textile, footwear sector, the social audits in the supply chain have been taking place for many years, for decades actually already. I would say it's around 30 years since the first programs were rolled out. But what we see is a lack of measurements related to the improvement regarding working conditions and social impact in the supply chain. A true lack. Very few brands are even seeking to, at a higher level, summarize the results and see if they are making progress in this area. And I encourage all of you to consider how you could do that. And how you can, independent of the data points you have in the ESRS or the information you have or the questions you have in the BRM, please consider that. How do I make sure that I really drive improvements in my supply chain related to both social and environmental topics? And not to forget chemicals management. We were just discussing that the other time, that chemicals management, a lot of programs have been rolled out in the supply chain, but we see not so much of phase-out programs. And that would be the measurable effect of a good chemicals management program. Now, jumping back briefly to the environmental section. And then we have governance, of course, as well. And here we have also some new topics. So, for example, the integration of processes to identify, assess, and manage sustainability-related impacts into the overall risk management process. We also have the policy to demonstrate commitment to protect animal welfare across the value chain, and one person at board level accountable for human rights. And this is also something we see. We know that that many programs lack the inclusion of the management level, the top management level in the companies, and even worse with inclusion of the board level. And in my view, it is not enough to report to the board from time to time. You need to engage, you need to train. There are questions in the BRM about educating and training your board members. And this is not only about telling them what you have been doing last year. This is really about making sure that they are aware and that they can understand when they are discussing the new strategy in their board meetings, that they can already begin considering, what does this mean for our sustainability programs? So this should not be just, someone appointed nicely to be the face, let's say, for human rights in the board. It should be someone who can engage and who can ask the right questions and who is prepared to educate himself or herself for this. And then also we have the follow-up process of risk management and internal control when carrying out sustainability reporting. And the biggest listed companies, they are really good at this because they have the governance systems already since many years. They are forced to do it already, and they have good risk management and internal control in place, where also all sustainability risks are also included in that overall risk management approach. But for not listed, or perhaps for a bit smaller companies, this might be a new perspective to take care of, but it is really important. So consider this. And now I would like also to give you just some insights into what it looks like in the platform. So and here, because I think it is really, it has been done in a really clever way. This is now one question as an example. It's the first question in the environment general section, and it's about a company-wide risk assessment for environment. So the question is, has your company carried out a business-wide environmental risk assessment to identify and prioritize the most significant or salient risk areas, like this. And now this is the question, and you can now respond yes or no. And there is guidance available for when you can respond yes and when you can respond no. So don't just respond yes without having looked into that guidance. But I will show you that specific guidance on the next slide. But first, I also want to show you the mapping that has been done here. So you can see here that we have here, this is a question that has been nominated as a critical question in the BRM. So there is a hierarchy in the questions. And here then we can see the examples. So all of these designations here, they relate to the ESRS relevant data points. And so a very detailed mapping. So this question is related to, I don't know how many, 10 different data points actually in the ESRS. So this is a great help for you when you prepare the BRM, but also, of course, if you're preparing for your CSRD report. And you know that there is the data points. You can find all the data points in an Excel table. You can download that Excel table. It's very, very comprehensive, as you know. There are more than 1,000 different data points. But there you can then go and have a look and see here, if you are interested, which exact question are we referring to here when we have this mapping. And the link here to these data points doesn't mean that BRM question, e.g. one here about the company-wide risk assessment, doesn't mean that it covers all aspects in these data points, but that it is related to these data points. And now I wanted to show you also what the guidance look like. So you can then click, we'll go back once, and you see here, you have this view guidance. You just click here, and then this window will open up. And here you will now see the complete and comprehensive guidance to this particular question. Please take the time to read through this when you're responding to your self-assessment. Please read it through and then specifically have a look at when can I respond yes and when can I respond no. Yeah. And we have one more example, and this is about the ecological thresholds. So in this case, and this is only one slide, did your company consider ecological thresholds when setting water-related targets? And this is now one of the new questions. So this is one of the voluntary questions. And in this case, you can see the mapping here, down here, and you can see the full guidance here. So I hope that that explains a bit how it is, how it works when you will be completing the BRM assessment. So currently you actually have all the guidance included online in the Worldly platform and in your BRM module. And now I wanted to give one practical example as well about how this is linked together, how the BRM questions are linked to the ESRS data points. So a robust mitigation plan begins by thoroughly understanding the risks associated with operations and business origins. So we take the topic climate change, the ESRS E1, just as an example. The E1, which asks for the disclosure of the transition plan for climate change mitigation, requires establishing a strong policy on these risk assessments, and it lays the groundwork for crafting a strategic approach to climate mitigation and adaptation. So by answering the questions, e.g. 01, e.g. 02, etc., you see them listed here. By answering these questions in the Higg BRM, you are guided through the process of establishing a detailed risk assessment, which can then serve as an essential starting point to address the E1 paragraph 14 and paragraph 16, and setting a solid policy for their climate strategy through the questions e.g. 9 and 10, which are crucial for disclosing according to the ESRS E1 paragraph 22, 23, and 24. So you can see now how the BRM actually complements the CSRD and the ESRS with additional guidance and support in how to prepare for your reporting. And so, and here you have one more example. So once you have identified your impacts, risks, and opportunities, you should establish specific goals. I already talked about that, and Sophia talked about that as well. So in this case, the questions ECL 04, 05, 06 in the Higg BRM focus on target setting that aligns with the EU's 2050 climate neutrality goal and responds then to the E1 question and the paragraph 16, 32, 33, and 34. And yet one more example with a question ECL 18 in the BRM, and it supports you in preparing again for the paragraphs 14, 16, 29, and 34. And so this is how you can think about the BRM as being a preparatory and a support tool for you to develop your risk assessments, your strategies, your implementation, follow up on your targets, etc., and how it then leads you to being able and prepared to report according to the CSRD. Yes, and now I have another topic that I want to go through, and very soon we'll come to your questions as well. So please feel free to post your questions as I speak. And now my new, or not my new, but it's a topic that I also want to talk about, and this is about the BRM verification. And so the process first. So for all of you who have completed your self-assessment, you can plan for your verification, your BRM verification. And of course, you can start planning even before that. And then you submit some information to us, to Leadership and Sustainability. We are a verifying body. And we have a conversation. We would also support you with a proposal, and you take a decision if you want to work with us or perhaps not. And then once we have decided to work together, you would make your self-assessment available to us, and you will also make all your evidence documents available to us. So those of you who have already completed a self-assessment, you are aware that there is a lot of documentation needed as well as a proof for the responses to the different questions. And based on this information, we will then develop a verification plan together and set up interviews. So with Leadership and Sustainability, you would always have interviews with all of the people who have responded to the different questions, and we would plan them together well ahead of time. And then we would conduct the interviews and verify the data, and we would finalize the verification module, and we would let you have a chance to look at it, of course, before you complete it and finalize the module. And then you can also post your verified BRM module, and you can communicate externally about your verification and about your results. And how long does it take? It really depends very much on the brand or retailer. So somewhere between 8 to 10 weeks, but it can really be adjusted to meet your needs. We can do it faster. We can also do it slower if that is what your plans look like. And now the verifier. We are working under confidentiality. So we usually have an NDA with our client. We also have a code of conduct, of course. We are approved by Cascale to do the BRM verifications. And in that respect, we have also signed a professional code of conduct. And we are, of course, also independent of the verified company. We might have been working together on other auditing or verification projects, but we are, of course, not allowed to do consulting with the company and then go and verify what we have consulted upon. And there should also be no conflict of interest. The planning and the meetings we have. So first, usually there is one coordinator at the brand or project manager. We usually have a planning meeting with that person, and then together we plan a kickoff meeting. And we usually ask that as many people as possible from the people who have responded to the BRM, that they are part of that process and come to the kickoff meeting as well. It's not a too long meeting, but it is important to just go through what is the process, what is the plan, what is needed in order to be well prepared. And then we have the interviews, and we discuss the different questions. So you know that Cascale is very keen on making sure that this doesn't feel like a black and white audit, pass or fail. The BRM, you cannot fail the BRM. You just get a score, exactly like with the FEM and the FSLM. But we would also, perhaps we have seen that, yes, a brand has responded, yes, and we think, but the evidence uploaded here is perhaps not really showing the correct response to this question. We need to discuss it. So perhaps we dive into a deeper discussion about this. Perhaps more information is needed or more documentation is needed. And sometimes there are also cases where we have to say, but the evidence is not enough to prove that you should respond yes to this question, and then we have to change that. But we always do that in conversation with the client. At the end of the day, it's our task. We are the judges, but it should not feel like that. It should be a good conversation, and hopefully we can convince you of our view of the accuracy of the question response. And then finally, at the end of the process, we will then have a closing meeting together, and I will show you very soon also what the presentation would look like when we have that closing meeting. We have quite rich, let's say, presentations, quite long presentations as well, but also visualized in order to make sure that you have all the results that you need. And here is now one example of when you complete the assessment, the people who can, or the different departments that might be involved. This depends, of course, a lot on how far you have integrated sustainability into all your business functions. We also have sometimes cases where a brand has only 1 or 2 representatives who, so to say, represent all these different business functions. But sometimes the brands see this as an opportunity to invite people from other departments who have been involved, to also give them the credit for what they have been doing and engage them more, and making sure that sustainability can be transferred out, bridged out to the departments where it should be managed. Yes, and then also documentation. As I said, documentation is really, really important. So I would encourage you that you already, during your self-assessment, that you download and mark up and store your documents in an organized and systematic manner, because you will need that during the verification. And so use folders, organize them by sections, organize them by question numbers, and then you can then name them and number them according to the question number. Unfortunately, in the Wordly platform online right now, the numbering 1, 2, 3, 4 in the different sections has been removed, and now we have these strange acronyms with several letters. But in the How to Higg guide that is online available, there is actually the numbering with 1, 2, 3 for every section. And then, of course, also keep the overview and stay organized. And then a small sneak peek. Here is the tool that we usually use during the verification. So we usually make a download of the entire self-assessment from the brand, and then we add a few columns in order to be able to follow. You can see here, for example, explanation and evidence. This would come from the brand, then our comments during the verification, and then is this question open or is it closed? Because in the Wordly platform, it is a bit difficult to keep track on the questions that you still need to discuss. So we always use this Excel table as well. We write also who are we interviewing, the date, and then perhaps later additional comments as well. And with this, we can easily see, aha, this question is closed, this question is open, and this question is open. And now regarding the closing meeting. So here is a typical closing meeting agenda that you can see. We have a general overview of the process. We give some general feedback about the sustainability work and about the process. And then we go section by section and have some, we give the scores, of course, but then we have some high-level information about the results, and then we go into detail as well. Each and every question where the brand or retailer can improve is listed then in a PowerPoint presentation looking like this here. Now you will be asking yourself, where can I read more? Well, there are lots of information available, and I would like to point you first of all to the Wordly platform that I already showed, where you can go and click and show and look at the additional guidance, because that has been updated. There is a How to Higg guide available as well. It is not yet completely updated with the new questions and the new guidance, because I didn't mention that before, but also the existing questions have to some extent received revised guidance. So to the existing questions, sometimes there is now additional guidance available that you really need to have a look at as well. But also some news. Cascale will move all the How to Higg guides, etc., into a new website, and you can see the address here. It is not yet live. It will come live in a week or so. And now we are heading towards the end. I see there are still no questions there. If you have any question, please post them in the Q&A. And we have 2 verifiers, 2 BRM verifiers. It's myself and also Ramya Kandior. And we both of us have a lot of experience. We have actually together conducted more than 80 BRM verifications over the past years. We work with the A8000. Cascale requires us to work with an assurance standard, and we are working with the A8000. We are also a licensed assurance provider. And so you will receive a certificate of assurance once we have completed the verification with you. And this assurance statement should be posted on your organization's website. And here also, just one important question in the BRM is really about the risk assessment and what is for us the materiality assessment. And we conduct quite a lot of materiality assessments, and we have been doing so for many years, or long before the CSRD was published. So you can book a materiality assessment with us, and to look at your impacts, risks, and opportunities. You see a small screenshot here to give you a small visualization of what it could look like, the high-level results. And with this, you can meet the BRM expectations. You can also learn as you go through the process. You can utilize a method that is really effective and insightful, and you can drive and master legislative change such as the CSRD with that. And please feel free to contact either Sophia or also Jan, who is on the strategy team. Okay, but in that case, I will say thank you so much. Thanks, Sophia, for supporting us here in this webinar, presenting with me, and also preparing most of the presentation. And with that, I also want to show you our last slide with our contact details as well. And I wish you a really good rest of your day, and thank you so much for joining. Take care. Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye.